Montgomery. Joining us now, Congresswoman Terri Sewell of Alabama. She attended the voting rights demonstrations in Selma and Montgomery yesterday. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. This fight that Black voters, Black representatives, and allies and accomplices throughout the country are taking on when it comes to voting rights is one that has been fought kind of in the shadows for a long time. What do you think it means that it's now in the daylight, and it feels like, I think, to a lot of voters, that those who want to create more voting opportunities for voters are a little bit behind the curveball?
You know, what we've seen from these southern states, this rush to get back and take away Black political power is not new. You know, I represent Alabama's civil rights district, historic cities of Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and my hometown of Selma. And we know that thousands and thousands of people literally gave of themselves and their lives for the right to vote. And we cannot go back. We won't go back. I think that that's what the protest, it wasn't really a protest. Yesterday was more about being a movement, a call to action, if you will. It was so inspirational to see so many people gather at the foot of the state capitol in Montgomery, Alabama, where John Lewis and those foot soldiers ultimately ended up on that fateful march from Selma to Montgomery. And for us to hear speaker after speaker talk about why it's so important that we vote like our lives depend upon it, that the call to action is one for voter registration, voter turnout, mobilization, organization. It is not for being upset, bemoaning what's happened, but rather rolling up our sleeves and knowing that we have to act in this moment. And, you know, it's not a protest. It was a call to action. It was, a movement. We hope that we'll go to other state capitals all throughout the South this summer. We need a freedom summer, if you will, where we are literally standing on the steps of these state courthouses and demanding that we don't go back, and that demanding political and representation for African Americans. You know, when one voice is muted in our democracy, it affects all of us. And I cannot believe that in spite of a Supreme Court going against its own reversing, decades of precedent, that the state of Alabama had met and decided to do a second primary. We have an election this Tuesday, a primary election where 4 congressional districts, the votes for those, which have already been underway. In fact, I've already voted absentee since we were supposed to be out of session this coming Tuesday. But those votes will not count. Not count in a democracy? I mean, it's irreparable harm to so many who've casted their ballots already. We have military constituents of mine that are already being shipped off to Iran and voted early. We have elderly folks who already have voted, and all those ballots will be cast out. It's simply unacceptable. I can't believe that under our collective watch, we're seeing such amazing progress that our foremothers and forefathers fought, bled, marched for, be eroded before our very eyes.
Congresswoman, on that point, I'm just wondering, and I know you said we shouldn't, folks should not despair, but why shouldn't Black folks despair over the situation that we as a community are in particular, but we as a nation are in general, when obstacles have been thrown up in our way to register to vote, to turn out to vote, to mobilize? What do you say to Black voters, to Black people who look at this time and say, you know what? Why bother when the country is literally turning its back on us?
Well, I think that, obviously people are upset, people feel powerless, but we have to know that our power lies in our collective action. And so our foremothers and forefathers probably felt helpless too. They had far less tools than we had, and yet they still persisted. And so what I'm saying is we can lick our wounds, we can be upset, but what we cannot be is deterred. We have to figure out a way to make a way out of no way, because that's what they did. And they did it with far less tools to their disposal, with far more hatred far more blatant hatred. I just think that what we have to remind people of is that we're fighting not just for some representation or no representation. We're fighting for fair representation. And in a state like Alabama, where 28% of the voting population are African American, almost a third, almost 1 in 3 people in Alabama are African American. We have 7 seats in Congress, and we deserve 2 seats. That is fair representation. And so we will stop at nothing less. It's not about trying to save my seat or only Shamari's seat or no seats. It's about saving both of our seats in the name of fair representation. And, we're not asking for, preferential treatment. We're just asking for fair treatment when this happens. So I really do hope that we turn that despair, turn that anger into action. The Bible says we can pray, but we have to move our feet at the same time.
Faith without work is dead, honey. The man said it.
Hello. Absolutely. I was in Selma before the march. There were a congregation of about 1,000 or so faith leaders who led a march from Tabernacle Church to the Edmund Pettus Bridge and prayed on that bridge like John Lewis and Martin Luther King did, and really set the tone in my mind for this fight ahead. This is about moral clarity. This is about harnessing the power of the Black church, not only to be a voice for us, but to be a place where we can organize and mobilize the vote. We're not telling folks how to vote, although we need, wink, wink, nod, nod, know how we want them to. I'm not trying to mess up their 501c3 status. But what I am saying is we need to start looking inward. It was ordinary people in Selma, my hometown, a 26-year-old John Lewis that had the audacity to make this nation live up to its highest ideals of, fairness, of equality and justice. And we need to take a page from their playbook. We also need to know that we have more tools at our disposal. We have to litigate. We have to legislate. We have to do everything we possibly can. I carry the seminal piece of legislation, the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And I am in the process, along with a lot of legal minds, redrafting that bill to address the Calais decision, to address the Shelby decision, to put preclearance back in by using a modern day formula, and to get rid of partisan gerrymandering. It needs to be outlawed. And every Democrat has already voted on the record to get rid of partisan gerrymandering. And every Republican voted for the record to keep it. And we just have to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to fight back. Because I don't know about you, but I ain't going back to the days when we had no representation.
That is why we will be watching this week a federal court hearing on May 22nd on the new Alabama congressional map.
Absolutely. And we expect to win that. We expect to win that. And we hope that that will stand.
We'll have you back on to discuss